Thanks for taking a look at how Snowflake can help your organization securely share data, resulting in better, quicker business decisions. My name is Rob Guglietti, a senior sales engineer at Snowflake based out of Toronto. Before we jump into the data exchange workload, I just want to spend a few minutes talking about the Snowflake architecture and 5 other workloads. With Snowflake, you get one platform with a revolutionary architecture for near unlimited data opportunities. Snowflake's unique multi-cluster shared data architecture logically separates but natively integrates storage, computing, and services. You can enable virtually all your users and data workloads to access a single copy of your data without impacting performance. The first workload we'll go through is data engineering. With data engineering, your data engineers will easily be able to ingest, transform, and deliver all your data for faster, deeper insights. With Snowflake, data engineers can spend little to no time managing infrastructure, avoiding such tasks as capacity planning and concurrency handling. Instead, they can focus more on value-add activities towards delivering your data. The data lake with Snowflake enables you to rapidly access data, query performance, and data transformations while capitalizing on Snowflake's built-in data governance and security. The data warehouse workload is often where our customers start their journey with the Snowflake Cloud Data Platform. Snowflake is used to store all of their business data and to power business intelligence tools and analytics. With the Snowflake Data Warehouse workloads, you are no longer bound by the capacity and scalability of your legacy data warehouses and architectures. With data science, the Cloud Data Platform enables data scientists to accelerate the velocity of their model development by gaining significant efficiencies in the way they access and process and consume data with our Python and Spark connectors, as well as SQL-related functionality. Data applications built on Snowflake allow you to launch new features faster with simplified data pipelines and improving engineering efficiencies. Delivered as a service, Snowflake handles infrastructure completely so you can focus on innovating with the data applications you build. That brings us to the data exchange, which is the topic of today's session. We'll deep dive a little bit into this workload. The need for companies to exchange lots of data securely is increasing rapidly with the increase of data across organizations. Companies are looking for ways to share data at scale, provide their employees and business partners with access to live, ready-to-query data, and grant their data analysts and data scientists secure access to new data sources. The traditional way of sharing data is very inefficient. The first data is spread across many different systems, databases, and data warehouses, making it difficult to determine the single source of truth. Data then has to be copied, sent, received, and transformed before it can finally be used. By the time the data is ready to be analyzed, it has become stale, and requesting updated data just restarts the entire flawed process again. The outcome is a complex, costly system that lacks security. Let's take a look at the traditional data sharing. Eventually, all your data ends up on a data warehouse, a data lake, or a backup somewhere, which means that finding the right data to share takes valuable time and resources. Once the right data has been found to share, it has to go through a series of data cleansing and transformation processes before it can actually be shared. Then, uploading the data to an FTP site or cloud bucket completes the first half of the process. Once the data is staged, the person on the receiving end needs to receive the entire process, needs to reverse the entire process, download and uncompress the file, extract and error check the data, and finally ingest it into the right system before it can actually be used for analysis. The entire process can take days or even weeks, depending on the volume of data to be shared. Alternatively, using APIs has its own challenges, like having to maintain your code, limits on the amount of quantity of data that can go through the API, as well as security risks around the API keys themselves. Snowflake is fundamentally different. With Snowflake's unique cloud data platform, every organization can securely source and share data. Creating your own data exchange to improve data collaboration. The entire data exchange process is simple and secure because the data does not have to be copied from provider and consumer. Anyone can easily source external data via the Snowflake Data Marketplace. And because there's no copying, you can start querying the data immediately without transformation. In addition, the data is always live and always consistent. Snowflake also gives consumers the ability to monetize their data by publishing it to the data marketplace. Finally, anyone can create their own data exchange, a centralized data hub where customers, employees, and others in the business ecosystem can securely share and collaborate on data with full governance and control. That brings us to the demo. So in today's demo, we're actually going to look a little bit into the Snowflake Data Marketplace and data exchange features of the Cloud Data Platform, where we'll quickly create a powerful dashboard utilizing our data warehouse data that we have. We'll connect it to the data exchange, where we have data that has been curated and posted by our internal users. And finally, we'll look at connecting to third-party data to enrich our data set that we have in our own data warehouse and post that into our live dashboard. Now, before we jump into the demo, just a little bit of insight and overview of the data we're actually looking at. We actually have a data set from City Bike. City Bike is a bike share program in New York City, where its members can actually go to different stations located throughout New York City. And each of those dots you see on this map, that's essentially a bike station. So its members go and pick up a bike, put in their credentials, ride their bike, and drop it off at another station. So City Bike is obviously very interested in its bike ridership, its usage patterns, and it needs to understand how to most efficiently put bikes at the stations at the right place at the right time. So with that, I'm going to jump on over to the demo. This screen you see right now is actually the Snowflake interface. The Snowflake interface for developers, data scientists, data engineers, they're all going to access one simple unified platform to do all their work. Again, today we're really narrow focused on the data exchange and data marketplace. But as I build out this demo today, you'll see certain features in action. We're not going to go into too much detail on them, but you'll see them in the demo itself. So the first thing we wanted to do is actually we're going to start analyzing our data as it relates to our internal data warehouse, where we have our trip data from New York City, or basically we can call it our fact data around the number of trips that have been taken per station over time. And so the first insights that I want to do as a data analyst looking to build a live dashboard is around the busiest day of the week. So I want to understand what is the busiest day of the week, and then therefore help the company to understand maybe maintenance patterns that should be applied on different days of the week, hopefully on our lowest usage day. So as I run that, we can come in here into the chart, and I can actually see a breakdown of number of trips over the days of the week over time. And we can easily see Wednesday is the busiest day of the week for bike ridership. This is where most New York's folks are actually going into the office. And then we can see on Saturday and Sunday, we have a drop in ridership where most people are staying home and maybe doing leisure rides. So with that, I'm happy with this insight. I want to actually post this to a dashboard. I'm going to post it to a new dashboard, and we'll just call it City Bike Insight 3. Third time I've done this demo. All right, so now we can easily see we have our key KPI on this dashboard. And throughout this demo, we're going to continually build this dashboard out as we get more insights. So the next insight that we have, and again, I prepared all these scripts as we obviously have time constraints here within the 25 minutes. And this particular use case or KPI that I have is what are the busiest stations in New York itself. So from that, we can actually identify and help the business understand what stations actually need to have more bikes than other stations, right? So we can see in here the Square North or East 17 and Broadway are our two most busiest stations. So obviously, as we maintain the bikes, as we move bikes around, we want to make sure that these top 10 stations have enough bike to manage the expected demand that we've seen over time. So this is great. I'm going to, again, add this to our City Bike Insight Dashboard 3. And we'll just take a quick look. And yeah, we got our two KPIs there now. Now our third KPI that we'll look at with our data warehouse data is our most active riders by age. So on this insight, we really want to understand how old the riders are. And if I go into the chart here, this is going to help us understand maybe target marketing and who we need to target and who we want to give maybe promotions to help them maybe take more riderships. So in here, you can actually see over time the age group 29, 30, 31, 32. So early 30s really is our most valued age group in terms of ridership. And then it flows all the way down as people get older. So really valuable insight here for marketing. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add this again to our dashboard. And now we're going to go into our fourth analysis. And for this fourth analysis, we're going to utilize data from our data exchange. We're going to actually introduce weather data with this trip data. So obviously, bike ridership highly depends on weather. Nobody really wants to go out and ride a bike in minus 20. And weather has a severe impact on a lot of organizations and a lot of usage patterns across people's lifestyles. So to do this, what we'll demonstrate is I'm going to go back to our homepage here, and under the Discovery tab, I'm going to click on the bottom list here, which is the Snowflake demo resources. This is the internal data exchange that we have in Snowflake, where we share our data amongst different solution engineers. And I can see in here that somebody has posted a data set, a weather data set, that actually converts data from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Now, obviously, being Canadian, being from Toronto, we actually like to see data in Celsius. So this is a fantastic view for me to source from in order for me to combine this with my trip data. So from here, now that I found the weather data that I need, typically this button here says Get Data. But again, in the interest of time, I've already pressed that button, and it's already been linked to my account. I'll show you the Get Data button once we get into the data marketplace. But from a time perspective, I've already done this for us, which means I can now go back into our Insights tab. I can now select from the weather view where I've combined it already with that trip data, and now we can see the weather and trip data alongside each other. So with that, I can now look at the result set in the chart format, and what can we see here? Well, along the bottom is the month numbers. So January, February, March. Easily we can see in January, February, the average temperature -3. That is our lowest month. So that makes sense. Nobody really wants to ride a bike in -3, but we can also look into our best months, and you can see in here in July, really this is where we peak out, and it was an average temperature of 23. So from here, we can actually add more analysis if we wanted to around precipitation or different weather patterns that happen over seasonality. But for now, I'm happy with this. I see some pretty good insights and trends. We can see our busiest month for ridership in July. I'm going to go ahead and add this to our dashboard. That brings us to the data exchange. And with the data exchange, what we want to do is we want to analyze third-party data. And in this case, obviously, everyone has been affected by COVID, whether you're a business, an organization, or just in general, any person is actually going to be affected. So in this case, we want to understand how has COVID affected the bike ridership or the bike usage across New York City. And to do that, I'm going to leverage the Snowflake Data Marketplace. And from here, what I'll do is I'm just going to check the marketplace to see if anybody has posted any COVID data. And if they have, I potentially can utilize that in my analysis. And what I can see here on the left-hand side is the different categories, different breakdowns of data that is available for me to utilize within a couple of clicks. Whether I want security data or government data or financial data, I can drill into these different data sets, and I can understand or potentially utilize these to help get more insights into our data that we have in our internal data warehouse. In our case, I'm going to just utilize a search function up here. I'm going to type in COVID. Now, once I type in COVID, we can see there's 17 results that relate to COVID data. I've obviously already reviewed some of these data sets, and the one that I want to use today in today's demo is from Star Schema. So if I click on this, I can see what Star Schema has said about the data set. So they give a little description about what it is. They give a little bit of an example use case of how we can utilize this data set. And I can actually see what fields are in this data set to make sure that this will actually make sense in the data that I have. So easily I can see in here, there's a lat long, it's got the dates and regions. So I'll be able to actually join this with my data from New York and do some filtering on the state and the region and the dates to join that with trip and weather data. So in order for me to work with this data, all I got to do is press this get data button. And from here, I'm just going to change the default alias. It's quite long and complicated, so I'm just going to simplify it and just call it Star Schema COVID-19. I can also then specify who I want to give access to this data set once I've linked to it. And in this case, I'm going to give it to the analyst and the DBA. And then I just accept the agreement and create my database. So that's it. Within a couple of seconds, I now have access to the COVID data set from Star Schema, and I can start utilizing and selecting from it right away. There was no data transformations, no ETL, no APIs, simply press the get data button, and now I have access to that. And to demonstrate that, what I'll do is I'm going to switch back over to our scripts here, and I'm just going to make a new view. And this view itself is going to select from our new database that we just linked to from Star Schema 19, COVID-19, and we're going to actually utilize a table in there from Johns Hopkins University. So Johns Hopkins University has one of the most trusted COVID data sets that most news organizations use, as well as governments. So we're going to do our join on this with the province and country and dates to analyze alongside our weather and trip data that we've already created and analyzed earlier. So to do this, I'm just going to create this view on the fly here. And now that view is created, so I can now select from it. So over here, again, I have a prepared statement, which is just basically going to select the date, the trip count, and how many confirmed COVID cases there are in New York. So once I run that, again, this data has not been moved to my account. We're simply utilizing the Snowflake infrastructure and shared technology to allow me live access to this shared data set itself from Star Schema. So now I can see the result set return back. I'm going to put this on a chart. And what do we see here quickly? First thing you can notice is this quick drop here. So the blue line is the number of trips. The yellow line is the COVID cases. So this blue line, if you remember back in March 12th, that's when the stock markets around the world really started to take a hit and started to go down. The sentiment around people's confidence and what was happening and the effect of COVID really started to take an impact on city bike, and bike ridership really took a deep dive and started to tank as well. What also we can get from this is, if you know, on March 21st, that's when the governor of New York, Cuomo, actually shut down New York City, and essentially only essential workers were allowed to go into the city. And again, from here you can see quite a deep dip in bike ridership in New York. Went down to 3,000 for that day, which is basically its lowest ever. And at the same time, you can see the COVID cases really start to spike and skyrocket. So really, that was a timely time to shut down the city, because right after that is where you actually see a huge spike in COVID cases within New York itself. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm happy with this. I'm going to add this to our dashboard. And with that, there's no more analysis to do. I'm quite happy. I'm going to come back to our dashboard. I'm going to reorganize a few things. So on the top here, you can see this was our analysis that we got from our data warehouse. But by leveraging our data exchange, we were able to bring in the weather data and see its impact across of our fact data. And finally, we were able to look at third-party data for COVID and actually see the impacts of our business as however COVID affected it. So two really great insights that have been made available by the Snowflake Data Warehouse Marketplace, as well as data exchange. And if you were to do this in the traditional way, you're obviously looking at days and weeks to even consider integrating and marrying up this data with your internal data warehouse. So with that, I'm going to go back to our presentation. And really, what we saw there is having your data on a single cloud data platforms means it's easier for the data to find the data right when you need it, especially when it's only a few clicks away. So as you saw there, when I found the COVID data, really one click, assigned the permissions, and now I was able to create views and analysis against that data set without further work or integrations. Since the data that was shared is shared instantly, I was able to query that and get the results sets back right away. And as Star Schema adds additional COVID cases throughout the day, as the weather source adds more weather information over a daily basis, I don't have to do any data movement. It's automatically already going to be there. I simply refresh my report, and I'm going to see the new data sets that have been posted by those exchanges and by the marketplace providers. Finally, this reduces the cost for both the provider and the consumer by increasing security and overall a better user experience. So obviously, me as a data analyst, I obviously appreciate a lot better having to go through this single click process versus actually connecting and going through maybe the technical team to get a FTP site set up and to have to load CSV or XML or JSON data. So with that, you actually saw there in action the Snowflake Data Exchange. The Snowflake Data Exchange is a critical capability of Snowflake Cloud Data Platform. It really is unique across the cloud data platforms in that data exchange works across all the clouds. So whether you're in Google, AWS, or Azure, you're going to have access to the exact same interface, the exact same platforms. Your customers or providers can be on any of these platforms, and you'll be able to provide the data set that they need to work with to analyze the data that you've given to them without having to change or go into a different zone or platform. The ability to actually exchange the data and your ability to actually work with this data enables you to govern this in a more secure fashion. So as you change your data, as you want to restrict access, you can do so as you control that exchange as the data owner itself. So with that, it was a quick look at the Snowflake Data Exchange. Thank you for attending this session. If you want further deep dives into any of these workloads or use cases, we have upcoming seminars called Masterclass. Simply just send me a message and I'll help you find that link to sign up coming in late September and October. So with that, thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.